In Formula One, controversies can result from anything as basic as two cars colliding or as complicated as corporate espionage. They occasionally fade out, but given the stakes, some end in tragedy. Of course, F1 won't pay attention, it never does, but one can hope. So let's start by discussing some of the most notorious controversies in Formula One history. Stay tuned. First up, Crashgate and Singapore Grand Prix 2008. During the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, Nelson Piquet intentionally wrecked his vehicle to bring out the safety car at precisely the right time for Fernando Alonso's pit stops, which resulted in the twice world championship Spaniard winning the race. The plan, which was apparently the creation of Pat Simons at Renault and Flavio Briatore, was carried out flawlessly by Piquet thanks to Ferrari pulling a Ferrari-esque screw-up and messing up Felipe Massa's pit stop, leaving the Brazilian caught up at the end of the pit lane with his fuel hose still hooked up. Piquet remained silent for a whole year until it became apparent that he'd eventually lose his place in the middle the next year. His father, Nelson Piquet, a three-time world championship, then blew the whistle. The rest is history. Briatore and Simons were barred before being allowed back in. Alonso joined Ferrari. Piquet joined NASCAR before capturing the inaugural Formula E championship. Briatore quit the sport, and Simons is presently employed by Formula One. No offense, but that's a popcorn-worthy controversy. Next, heavyweight clash, McLaren versus Ferrari 2007. While Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, and Kimi Raikkonen were competing for the F1 championship between McLaren and Ferrari during the 2007 season, Ferrari alleged that a McLaren engineer had received the design specs of the most recent Ferrari from a former employee, Nigel Stepney, the former head of performance development. The FIA launched an inquiry, found no proof, and imposed no sanctions against McLaren. Sounds less like F1 and more like some spy thriller. However, a second hearing was held a short while later, with fresh information. A massive $100 million punishment was levied, and the McLaren was disqualified from the 2007 Constructors' Championship. The entire F1 world was in danger of devolving into a game of tit-for-tat brawls and finger-pointing when McLaren revealed that Renault had acquired comparable information on McLaren's vehicles. In the end, McLaren admitted some fault, with Ron Dennis claiming to be the one who presented the further proof. Although convicted, Renault received no punishment, and the Italian lawsuits against many McLaren workers were withdrawn. Up next, tragedy ensues. Villeneuve versus Pironi at the San Marino GP 1982. The tragic thing about Formula One is that if there's a significant disagreement, the drivers tend to fight out any consequences at 200 miles per hour on the circuit. Case in point, San Marino, 1982. Ferrari only needed to amble to the finish to ensure a 1-2 finish in Italy, something that most racing drivers aspire for. The two Ferraris had it all to themselves as their only true rival, Alain Prost's Renault, had retired on lap 4, and Ferrari instructed the drivers to slow down. Villeneuve assumed that this also meant maintaining their positions and believed that Pironi was only playing to the fans when he later overtook him. He slowed down and passed Pironi. As the race entered its last lap, Pironi surged ahead and finished first. Villeneuve was outraged. He pledged never to talk to Pironi because he felt deceived. Could have just been a case of some miscommunication, but we can empathize with him. The continuation of this already heated intra-team conflict was scheduled for the Belgian Grand Prix at Zolder 2 weeks later. As final qualifying came to a close, Pironi was locked into the pole position after posting a time that was 1/10 quicker than Villeneuve's. Villeneuve left for a final try to beat his French partner, but never came back. Hitting the rear of Jochen Massa's vehicle, he died as a result of the collision. We'll never know, but many think he was trying too hard to defeat Pironi. A truly harrowing reality check at the end of the day, sports should not become a matter of life and death. And now, blackmail or team orders for Barrichello and Shoemaker, 2002. When the 2002 Austrian Grand Prix got off what was then known as the A1 Ring, Michael Shoemaker had already won 4 of the opening 5 races and had a sizable lead in the championship. Rubens Barrichello was leading him in the latter stages of the race. Shoemaker was poised to extend his championship advantage since he was still finished second, and his brother Ralph was well behind him in the standings. Here, telling the drivers to hold the station was the logical course of action. It goes without saying that Ferrari instructed Barrichello to allow Shoemaker to pass with roughly 8 laps remaining because otherwise we wouldn't be talking about the race. A conversation ensued, during which Barrichello declared his refusal to yield to Ferrari team principal Jean Todt, the former FIA head, and Todt warned Barrichello that he would be fired if he didn't. The outcome wasn't settled until the very final lap. Barrichello, who was trying to send a message, pulled on the brakes 100 meters before the finish line. Shoemaker, who saw how unpleasant this looked right away, tried to slow down even more, but still edged out his colleague to take first place. To say they received boos when they stepped out of their automobiles and onto the podium is an understatement. The secondhand embarrassment on that podium must have been something. Next, Schumacher versus Villeneuve at Jerez, 1997. No allegations, but whether it's his fault or not, Michael Schumacher's name appears quite frequently on this list. In 1997, he was solely to blame. For Schumacher to win the championship, he had to finish at a higher position than Canadian Williams driver Jacques Villeneuve, son of Gilles, in the season's last race. Villeneuve trailed Schumacher by 47 laps, occasionally lagging behind him and other times hot on his heels. Villeneuve finally made his move on lap 48. He had progressively gotten closer to Schumacher until he was within striking distance. He recognized his opportunity at the dry sack turn and entered Schumacher cleanly from the inside. Schumacher, though, turned in. The left front wheel of the Ferrari clashed with the side pod of the Williams. While Villeneuve continued, Schumacher found himself in the dirt, his chances of winning the title in ruins. Even though his car was damaged, he persisted and limped to third place, which was good enough to win the championship. One job, Michael. One job, and you failed at that. Yikes! He lost his ranking in the 1997 standings as a result of the FIA's decision. Although he was still permitted to maintain all of his race wins, some claim that because he had already lost the championship, it wasn't truly a penalty. And now, Senna versus Prost at Suzuka, 1990. Any list of F1 controversies would always be incomplete without the mention of the legendary rivalry between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. Despite no longer being teammates in 1990, they remained close during the championship race, a year on from the first time that their tempers had flared at the same track. Senna finished first in qualifying and was incensed to learn that the pole position would begin on the dirtier inside of the grid. He and teammate Gerhard Berger objected, and the FIA agreed. However, FISA chairman Jean-Marie Ballister ordered a reversal. Senna was furious and declared the two of them wouldn't come out of the first corner if Prost entered in first. As Senna had feared, Prost got the better start from the cleaner side of the track and easily led the way as they rolled into the first corner. Yet, as he loosened and turned in, Senna smashed into the back of the Ferrari. The collision, which occurred at about 130 miles per hour, sent the two cars off into the barriers. The winner of the championship was Senna. Next, Hunt versus Lauda at the British Grand Prix 1976. Alongside Niki Lauda, his title challenger, James Hunt, qualified for the British Grand Prix at Brands Hatch in second place. Hunt stumbled his way out of the pit and fell behind, while Clay Regazzoni pushed forward to overtake Lauda going into Paddock Hill. They collided, shattering Lauda's car's back wheel and starting a multi-car collision that Hunt got tangled in. Due to the debris on the course, the race was red flagged. The rule that no driver could continue the race unless they had finished the first lap and were driving their original vehicle seemed simple enough given that Hunt and Lauda had both managed to turn around. Hunt, though, had made a detour and arrived at the pits without crossing the line. He was expected to be eliminated. The crowd wasn't pleased as they waited to see their idol while standing on a scorching bank. Chants were raised in support of Hunt, and the atmosphere quickly became tense. Thoughtfully, McLaren decided to at least fix Hunt's car so that even if he hadn't finished the first lap, he would still have his original vehicle. The stewards gave Hunt the chance to compete in a completely repaired McLaren M23 because they feared the crowd was ready to erupt and saw it as a last resort. And he won! And then the opposing teams started to object. Did they let the crowd bully them into bending the rules? Wow. The stewards rejected the objection, and the RAC, which had overseen the race, followed suit. Ferrari subsequently appealed to the FIA. Hunt was eventually disqualified more than 2 months after the competition. That's a wrap for this video. Which other F1 controversies do you think deserves a place on this list? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.